thing happening is a discussion again, and this time it's my real pleasure to introduce to you the two discussants. So it's Patrick Nygren Bonnier, who is head of marketing for IKEA Sweden, and in the other corner, Ben de Vries, who is president for brand management, Ericsson, period. So we are going to talk on various topics, but one main focus will probably be running history, marketing, and using history in a multinational corporation with a Swedish strong connection and identity. And I'm going to start out by giving the word to Ben to do your presentation, and we follow more or less the same formula as before lunch. So after that, Patrick will do a short presentation, and then we sit down for a discussion. So please, Ben.
Thank you.
A warm hand for Ben.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben, to confuse with even more Bens in this event today. I'm also Dutch. A long time ago, I was introduced by one of the managers when I worked in England as Ben de Vries, but you actually said it correct. So thank you for the right pronunciation. And I also liked it that you called me president, but I'm not president. I'm head of brand management, Ericsson Global, based here in Stockholm, and I've lived in Sweden for 15 years, and I have worked for Ericsson for 15 years. And Ericsson, if you look into this picture, this is from Fiskar Gränd, the Verkstad, the factory and office there. This was in 1890, and Ericsson had 130 employees there. So after 14 years, we had already 130 employees. And our history goes back to our founders' belief that every person on earth should be able to get affordable communication access. And we've heard it before, the affordable word this morning, and I think that is spot on. Because you can develop a lot of technology, but if it's not possible to be used for the masses, then it's not going to be any useful in many cases. And Lars Magnus believed then in a connected world. And if you look now, 140 years later, you could almost say that we have realized, we're well on the way to realize that vision, when over 90% of the world's population is now in different ways, but connected to mobile communication technology. And that's quite an achievement if you look back from where we started with 1G, the fixed telephone that many of you probably remember, maybe not all, some might be too young for that. 2G, mobile telephony came in the world and all the services around that. 3G, we made the internet mobile. 4G, high-speed networks. And we're now working on 5G. We heard Volvo, we are partnering with them on making self-driving cars and all kinds of services available in the car. Remote surgery, you don't want to be operated remotely and then the network doesn't work, for example. So we have, of course, a challenge as a brand. We were consumer brand once. We are not anymore at this stage. So the great brands this morning have, of course, much higher budgets for marketing and branding. But I want to talk a little bit about how we use history in our marketing, because it's really well grounded in the Ericsson culture. And to sort of capture that, I would like to show you a short film.
On the north shore of Borneo, I saw one of those big Ericsson mobile phones standing on a sack of rice. That was the local telephone booth. You could phone from there to the rest of the world. That was one of the moments where I was proud of being an Ericsson man.
It dawns on me sometimes that I've been part of this, to bring back memories of the early days.
The salespeople in the early 1900s that went out on a boat and came home 2 years later and sold one product, and you think about the perseverance.
It was an amazing environment to work in.
We were allowed to have a vision.
We had an enthusiastic team of people, fearless people.
They would not go home. Some of them would even sleep in the offices.
It was a new world. and you needed new skills, new technologies.
It was obvious to me, if there was a way that you didn't have any longer to be tied to the wall while you were speaking on the phone, that technology would be immensely important.
It was an absolute super challenge. And the first thing we decided was that this is for everybody. This is a freedom tool. You're building freedom for everybody.
Building a model of the mountains inside the phone several times per second.
It was very complicated technology. We needed fantastically good people to do it.
What those clever guys have done, that's amazing.
3D really happened. It just exploded.
We contribute today with our technology, giving people the opportunity to communicate in the poorest villages in Africa. I mean, that's exciting stuff.
You have to be very innovative to become 136 years old.
Well, you got to try things out.
Only our own imagination can put the limit to what really will happen.
Everything that can benefit from being connected will be connected.
How far can you go? I think that's where imagination brings you.
So this was a 28-minute documentary that we actually captured 4 years ago when we celebrated 136 years. I think we're actually the oldest brand here today. Right now we are 140 years, but what this movie captures in essence, again, is what we spoke about, it's not necessarily the technology that is what people will remember. It is the impact that it has on society, on people's lives and on businesses. And if you look back into what Lars Magnus said, an all-connected world, and if you listen to these stories, and if you look into how you live your lives and use ICT and technology today in everything, then you can say that that vision has been more or less realized. So a few years ago, we launched a new vision as a company, and we call it the networked society. So when everything is connected, what kind of innovations can we do on top of that? And with that also, we are now repositioning Ericsson to grow in other areas. So the majority of our turnover has been coming from operator customers globally around the world. And we are now also targeting and bringing a broader portfolio to new kinds of customer groups, like industry customers in the transport area, utility companies, energy companies, media companies, and public safety. So we are taking a broader role in order to stay relevant, because you need to reinvent and transform to be relevant to be able to live for another 140 years, which is definitely our aim. This is, I think it's actually here, Christer, in your vitrine there. This is the oldest account ledger that Lars Magnus himself was doing, and he believed very much in archiving. So we have quite a few things left from that time. And this more or less captured 7 years of the first 7 years of Ericsson history, and a lot of design drawings are kept there. And we are really happy with the work and the collaboration that we have with Center for Näringslivs Historia. It's really important. Our former CEO, Hans Westberg, he was collecting clocks, because Ericsson also produced clocks at a certain stage. And you see from the top to the bottom, people, as you said, come with own things that Ericsson produced. We even did cutlery once upon a time. Our strategy right now is a network society where we then target new customers. And from a branding and marketing perspective, that is quite a challenge on one side, because a lot of those people and decision makers think we do mobile phones or we do networks, and how can a network be relevant for new kinds of customers? So we need to be able to tell a story and make ourselves relevant for those kind of industry customers. We are utilizing our story and our success in standardizing the telco globally as a red thread through the storytelling. And then the celebration of 140 years, internally we had a discussion, should we really highlight that? We might be seen as a big global, a bit old company, maybe even in some cases. We are being disrupted, the market is being disrupted. So should we really highlight it, or should we focus on the future? And we decided, so yes, it's important because it is part of our culture, it's part of our values, and it creates a lot of sentiment when you ask people about what has happened and how generations have contributed to the technology revolution. We decided to launch a theme of 140 years of innovating ahead. And we invited customers and partners to join us and really position Ericsson as a new company, a modern company that is much broader than only a networks company. So we are becoming a media company, an IT company, and a services and software company. And to be able to tell that story, we use our history to showcase how we have globalized and standardized technologies and how we can support industries with doing that going forward. And you see that those new kind of customers, they know Ericsson and they have an interest to talk to us because they see that mobility and connectivity has changed the world. So they're interested, but they don't really know what we as a brand can contribute with. And that's where the storytelling comes in. Lars Magnus and Hilda. Lars Magnus traveled a lot abroad in the beginning to create markets, understand the need, and Hilda was actually running the business at home here, his wife. And they actually wrote letters to each other, and we've gone back, and this is the advantage of archiving stuff. We went back to those letters, and in those letters they communicate with each other. Oh, I wish I could see our children now when he was far away in China. Already, I think in 1895 we started business, or 1890, I don't know exactly when we started. And Hilda says, I wish you were here, I could see you through the stars. Quite romantic they were. We call it the love letters. And we used their vision and their communication in a way to tell our story about how we have made their wish come true. So let's have a look on that film.
My beloved Hilda, arrived here in London yesterday from Paris. Our telephones seem to be in the forefront, and we have not yet seen an exchange matching ours. Many kisses and greetings from your husband to you and our little ones.
Dear Lars Magnus, I was so happy to receive your letter. Our sales partner visited today, asking for double blueprints of each drawing. Many letter kisses from your devoted Hilda.
We have hired an engineer who can travel to Shanghai, so perhaps there is finally a way to enter into that market. You still seem so far away, but indeed, our telephone lines are making the world a much smaller place. Being so far away from you, having no contact with the rest of the world, my thoughts are most often with you, and I send you my greetings via the moon.
I have received your letter sent from Chicago. Gustav cannot quite understand you can receive letters, as I have told him that you are so very far away. Now I will take this letter to the post box at the station.
Dear Hilda, I miss you and the children endlessly. But I remind myself often of the good our work will bring to so many.
Words cannot express how much I miss you. I only wish we could see each other again soon.
Dear Hilda, we recently employed new and experienced workers who can build up the company we need. They will be able to build the equipment and deliver it to many more people faster than we have in the past.
Dear Lars Magnus, I do hope it will be possible for us to achieve more and find the strength to meet the challenges in the future.
So we call this the Turning Points film. Yeah. And when I first showed this to Helena Norman, the CMO of Ericsson, she was a bit quiet. And she said, "Ui, it's emotional." But that's good, she said. We need to get more emotional in the way we tell our story. At the same time, we launched also a movie that we called This is Ericsson, and that is a more up-tempo and modern version. I would love to keep you here the whole afternoon. I'm not going to show it to you, but you can go to ericsson.com and find it out. It's modern, it puts Ericsson in the context to attract new talent and to be relevant going forward as well. So we are working a lot on that, and some of the team that has been working on this campaign is sitting here in the room. And towards employees, we created a fairly very cost-effective engagement. You know, when you go to a stadium and you ask people to do this and some sort of message comes forward. We did this globally all around the world. asking people what is the next innovation that will drive our destiny forward. And we got more than 50 TIFOs that we call. This was the one at the headquarters, collected globally. We're in the middle of this campaign, so we will award the best teams in September when we have an all-employee meeting. We got a lot of traction by employees sharing this day and sharing the excitement. We did a toast, a non-alcoholic toast, because 118,000 people, if you want to give a glass of champagne to everyone, it becomes very costly. So we decided to do it cost-effective, but really challenge the workforce to sort of continue the story of Ericsson and continue the story of the impact on society. So you see here some numbers that we had, and for a B2B company, these are good numbers to get on social media. And also the Ericsson.com, we had a much high uptake there, and we're actually going to invest some money in the history side that we have to make it more interactive. We see a lot of traffic on that side. There is a lot of interest from not only historians and students, but also from customers and other people when they want to find out about Ericsson. So we're going to invest that during the fall now as well. So for Ericsson, our history has always been about the future, and it will always be. Thank you.
Great. Well, hello. Doing things differently is a core value for IKEA, and I'm not Ben. I have no flashy films, and I will fortunately do the presentation in Swedish. Sorry guys, no subtitles, but I will speak English later. My name is Patrick. I've been working at IKEA for 3 years at the head office for Sweden down in Helsingborg. And I will talk with you guys for 10 minutes, and I will do it the old-fashioned way. And I need my eyes. There we go. Det mesta är ännu ogjort, underbara framtid. Känslan av att vara färdig är ett effektivt sömnmedel. En människa som vid pensionsdags tycker sig ha gjort sitt förtvinar snabbt. Ett företag som anser sig vara framme vid målet stagnerar snabbt och förlorar sin livskraft. Lyckan är inte att nå sitt mål, lyckan är att vara på väg. Vårt underbara öde är att stå just i början inom alla områden. Endast genom att ständigt fråga oss hur vi gör idag kan göra oss bättre imorgon, kan vi komma vidare. Positiv upptäckarglädje ska besjäla oss också i framtiden. Ordet omöjligt är och förblir borta ur vår ordbok. Det där var några meningar ur en möbelhandlares testamente från 1976, skrivet av Ingvar Kamprad. IKEA är ett gammalt företag, men gammalt i kroppen med ungt i sinnet. På något sätt så klättrar vi på vår framtid in i historien. Jag tror att det här är en av de viktigaste anledningarna till att vi fortfarande är så stora som vi trots allt är, och att vi fortsätter att växa. Den som tror att vi har en underbar framtid kommer säkerligen också ha en underbar framtid. IKEA startades 1943, mitt i brinnande världskrig. Det är nu 70 år sedan, och skulle idag kunna vara en trött och gammal pensionär. Men den ständiga nyfikenheten sitter i generna. Och det är faktiskt så att de viktigaste delarna i idén om heminredningsföretaget IKEA är lika moderna idag som de kanske var revolutionerande för 50-60 år sedan. Kunden i fokus. På IKEA-språk säger vi står på de många människornas sida. Samarbete med kunden. Idag pratar man om co-creation. Vi säger, du gör din del, vi gör vår. Tillsammans sparar vi pengar. Omtanken och sparsamheten med resurser. Både när det gäller människor och miljö. Vi har en strategi när det gäller just det, som gör i alla fall mig väldigt stolt och som driver oss framåt när det gäller de här frågorna, som heter People and Planet Positive, som handlar om att vi vill ge tillbaks mer än vi tar från människor och miljö. Stora volymer och smart och resurssnål distribution. Såklart väldigt viktigt även idag. Kontroll över hela värdekedjan och samarbete och genuin omtänksamhet om våra leverantörer. Starka värderingar och inte minst ett starkt varumärke och en väldigt karismatisk ledare. Det som IKEA kanske är mest känt för är de platta paketen. Ingvar Kamprad registrerade sitt företag 1943. Då var han 17 år gammal. Han sålde pennor, han sålde tändstickor, han sålde olika typer av hushållsprodukter. Lätt att paketera, lätt att skicka. 1948 kom möblerna in i sortimentet. Och självklart då svårare att skicka, dyrare att skicka och en risk att de gick sönder. Så det var husdesignen, jag kommer komma tillbaka till hans namn, som designade en produkt. Och i ren frustration över att inte få in det här vackra bordet i bilen så såg han av benen och fick plats med bordet i sin bil. Det här var 1956 när han plattade till och designade det här bordet. Är det någon här som vet vad den chefdesignen hette? För han dog tyvärr för ett par månader sedan. Han var den 4:e anställde på IKEA. Gillis Lundgren, grattis, du har fått ett bord. Jättebra. Det där bordet kostade 45 kronor, 1956 kostade det 495 och fortfarande tycker jag ett fantastiskt fint möbel till ett fantastiskt pris. Historien om IKEA är historien om våra produkter. Vi säger att vår identitet är i vårt sortiment. Idag har vi 9500 produkter. Vi byter ut ungefär en fjärdedel varje år. Vi har även ett antal kollektioner och nyheter som kommer varje år. Vi har 19 kollektioner i år. Det som är aktuellt just nu är en kollektion som kommer om en vecka. Martin Bergström, Svärtan, heter den kollektionen. Och vi har haft också väldigt omtalade, uppskattade samarbeten med världskända formgivare som Ilse Crawford och Ingegerd Roman. Och vi har ett spännande samarbete som kommer upp här nästa år tillsammans med Hej från Danmark. Men det gäller ju att vi tänker inte bara nytt när det gäller nyheter och kollektioner. Vi tänker nytt hela tiden när vi utvecklar vårt sortiment. Och när vi tänker nytt så gör vi det vi kallar demokratisk design. Och det handlar om att vi gör bara produkter som vi älskar. Och de måste vara av god funktion, god kvalitet, god design, miljömässigt hållbara och till ett pris som alla har råd med. Och varje gång vi gör en ny version av en produkt, eller vi gör en ny produkt, så måste den produkten vara bättre i alla 5 avseenden. Design, kvalitet, hållbarhet, funktion och pris. Det är en jättestor utmaning, men det är vårt sätt att se att vi driver oss själva vidare med vår nyfikenhet att göra saker bättre för många människorna. När det gäller vår kommunikation så har såklart historien en viktig del i det som vi behöver berätta och vill berätta för människor. Därför kommer vi nästa vecka lansera ett nytt koncept där IKEA-produkternas självklara plats i människors liv är en del och demokratisk design är en annan del. Och det är självklart att vår identitet är en förutsättning för den kommunikation vi gör. Vi måste alltid tänka på enkla, smarta, underhållande och omtänksamma i allting vi gör. Vi måste förstå, respektera och även utnyttja att det är så många som faktiskt är intresserade av IKEA och vad vi håller på med. Och det är faktiskt så många som är intresserade av IKEA. Det finns massor av historier på det. Jag hörde det senast bara för några veckor sedan uppe i Haparanda. För det är så, vi har förstått att det är många som tycker att IKEA är sitt. IKEA är svenskarnas. Och här uppe i Haparanda så var det en man som kom fram och gav en ganska mild men ändå en utskällning till varuhuschefen och sa så här, alltså, hur kan ni ha så högt pris på den här bordet? Jag betalar ju faktiskt skatt i det här landet. Men jag tycker det är härligt och även Ingmar har alltid sagt det. IKEA tillhör svenskarna. Så svenskheten är viktig i det avseendet för IKEA. Och eftersom så många svenskar ser IKEA som sitt så har vi en gemensam historia som vi delar. Så därför så öppnade vi ett museum i somras som ligger mitt i hjärtat av Älmhult. Det gamla varuhuset från 1958. Och IKEA-museum är historien om IKEA. Där samlar vi våra rötter, vi samlar våra berättelser och vi samlar era berättelser. Vi pratar om dåtid, vi pratar om nutid, vi pratar om framtid. Och det är riktigt roligt att vara där. Jag har varit där en gång och om ni inte har varit där så ta er tid och ta er dit. Det är verkligen fantastiskt spännande att se vilken tid IKEA växte upp i. Då förstår man vilken revolution det var på den tiden. Och sen är det också väldigt kul också att gå runt och faktiskt följa alla de här produkterna som man faktiskt har en relation till, de flesta av oss. Väl värt ett besök. Och så finns det också spännande framtidsutställningar. Nu har just nu Framtidens kök som kommer vara där ett halvår. Så avslutningsvis, när vi pratar om kommunikation idag så pratar man väldigt mycket om att ha shareworthy historier, delningsbara historier. Och vi på IKEA är oerhört tacksamma glada för det intresse som finns för IKEA som företag, för våra produkter och för våra historier. Och att de tycker att våra historier är delningsvärda. Och jag är övertygad om vi fortsätter att vara öppna och nyfikna, för det kommer ihåg att det mesta är ogjort och framtiden är underbar, så kommer vi ha en väldigt spännande framtid framför oss tillsammans med våra kunder. Tack!
Thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you, Ben. Two most interesting presentations with a little different character. And now we're going to sit down for a while again for a new discussion. And I wonder if we shouldn't have Patrick in the IKEA chair here. From now on, we will call it the IKEA chair. Is the Wallenberg chair fine with you?
Yeah, this is from the Ericsson boardroom. I suggest we switch and we start a new partnership.
Thank you. Perfect.
Isn't that great?
The most connected home.
Oh, that's much softer, that one. you knew this. You knew this.
We expect to see the two models in production very soon.
Yeah, of course. It's cheap to produce.
Fantastic. So, well, I would like to start this conversation a little bit on what you talked about now at the end about being a Swedish company. And that is sort of the first thought that we had when we matched the two of you together, speaking about a big multinational corporation growing in different parts of the world, expanding, but yet keeping some sort of an essence, which is about Swedishness and Swedish, well, typical traits, maybe. What are Swedish values? I'm not so sure myself, actually, about that. It's been under discussion recently, and it's an interesting topic. And I think that what is considered typical of national identities right now, more and more, are actually defined by corporate organizations in a very interesting way. And I think both Ericsson and IKEA are in their ways, good examples of this. To begin with, would you agree with me on this?
That IKEA is a good example of Swedishness,
or
being Swedish.
Or actually also defining, Swedishness. And maybe this is not just the case of your two corporations, but that the corporate world takes an active part in defining national identities today.
Yes, I think, as I said, we're very fortunate that IKEA has such a close place in people's hearts and minds. And of course, with our founder, I think we have an important role to play. And I know in other countries, of course, everyone visits the IKEA store and gets some part of Swedishness, I guess, with them. So I can agree with you there. I think we kind of define some areas of Swedishness abroad.
And when you do that, do you do it? Do you discuss it in what you choose to put forward as being Swedish? Is this something you discuss? Should we have surströmming or should we have meatballs?
We shouldn't have surströmming. Have you ever tasted it? Of course, we discussed that a lot. But I think also the discussion of Swedishness is really important. It's developing, of course. Swedish. We have some if I may speak, of some areas I think are important when it comes to Swedishness and IKEA. Of course, being very, very close to nature, very careful about environment and people, the ingenuity, of course, the togetherness, the curiousness. So I think there are a lot of things that we try to use also when we develop new products. As I said, we always want to make products that are better than the ones before.
Right.
Yes.
I can also add to that from an Ericsson perspective, the values that at least we see that Sweden has are very much matching with the Ericsson values, and it's all about innovation. Stockholm is now seen as one of the places, the most smart startup place to be. If you look from a digital revolution, of course competing now with Silicon Valley, it's much about trust, ethics, and also about really quality and education and equality. And those values we really, I mean, we have been in China for over, I think, 120 years. We've been in Latin America for over 130 years. We bring those values out to where we have started there, but of course it's a balance. You also need to take in the local cultures and the local values, but we really need to stick to our core values and the principles, and that's what we're really strong at. So I think, yes, the Swedishness is something that we use as a competitive advantage, but it's good to mix it with a local flavor, absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
And Ben, when you say that, you mean mostly, I would say, in sort of an internal sense within the organization to bring that's the way we work in our corporation, right? So that'll be...
Yes, I think externally it's more showcasing it, proving it, and we do a lot of demonstrations, technology demonstrations, we do a lot of thought leadership. So yes, but we do talk about it as well, because it's important to also highlight it and to highlight that we are a company that follows certain ethics and that really works with investing in innovation so that the customers actually see how much money do they put behind the words, and how do we recruit talent for the future globally, and how do we make a diverse workforce work all together. So yeah, I would say it's both. Yeah.
Do you wind up in conflicts? I still address the both of you here when it comes to the relationship between you and companies, locally placed companies in other countries, in terms of working environments and legislation that is different in different countries?
Yes. I would say that, of course, being a global company, having offices in more than 130 countries, you get into a lot of complicated situations from different perspectives, legal perspective, commercial perspectives, and ways of doing business and so on. So yes, we do get a lot of conflict. So we have a very competent legal team that helps us with a lot of different variety of areas. I'm not a legal expert myself, but yes. Again, I think if you manage to, when you recruit new people and the people that have been there for a long time, they need to act and live according to our core values, and we train the people and what does that mean and how do I act if I don't do it. But yeah, from my own experience, I worked in Ghana as head of marketing for Africa for a while, and I had to do a course on how we should behave correctly, and concerning bribery, we shouldn't go for it. In the evening, one of the guys who was going to film an event, he got stuck in customs. And he said, how do I get out? They want money, but they don't want to give me a receipt. It's a small thing, but how do you handle those things? And in the training it says call global legal, but they don't answer the phone at 11 o'clock at night. So, and this is a small, but those things of course scale in other areas where we have big contracts and big customers and so on, and big offices. Yeah.
Precisely, and do you also have similar experiences with
yes,
IKEA?
And I also think we're talking about being a value-driven company. I think that is when the values are really tested. But we also say that we are a Swedish company, but still with local flavors. So of course, with our values and with our deep concern about ethics and doing business the right way, we're doing our best to influence the markets we work in, of course. And we have what we call IKEA ways. It's a very deep way of securing that we're working in a good way with our different companies that we work with. So, of course, we can do influence. We are challenged, but I think being value-driven is important, and to stick with that.
If we leave the values aside for a moment, what about, if I can be blunt, selling?
Yes.
Is Sweden really an asset when it comes to selling furniture in itself? Do people on IKEA Shanghai buy furniture because it's Swedish at all? Or maybe they just don't care?
I think we are for the many, the fun thing is that you can see that it works. I mean, we are stepping into new markets all the way. Now, a new market now, for instance, is India, and we can see, and South Korea last year, and it works. And I think I heard someone before talked about this Swedishness, and that I think there's certain areas of Swedishness that are really commercial. So I really believe that there are many countries it's good to have a Swedish reputation or brand.
Yeah, I think Sweden as such might not be the factor for customers to decide to make contracts with Ericsson, but I do believe that in Sweden we stand for quality. If you want to upgrade your network or want to outsource your services contracts, you want to do that with a partner that is not automatically the cheapest, but that also is there when things get tough or when complex situations arise. And we talk about multi-year contracts and so on. So, and there, of course, the Swedishness comes in. So yes, the trust and ethical partner is really important for us. Yes.
And then also history becomes an asset. You can use your past in a way. Speaking of when times get tough, and they all of a sudden do in the corporate world, you have to live with that. And for instance, Ericsson has had its strong crisis periods. If you compare the role of history in the company during good times and bad times, does it change? Does it mean more in the one than the other? Does it become a burden in some sense in one or the other?
I think it is. It's a difficult question to answer.
I know.
The spirit, no, but the spirit of our soul and the spirit of our founder, even though we might change the vision and the direction of the company, that is there, and that becomes stronger even in difficult times. We can change, in a way, the leadership. We can change structures, but the spirit and the foundation of what brought us and made us big, that is very much there. Of course, when things get tough, yes, you are being challenged. And Ericsson being 140 years, we are being challenged on, are we fast enough with growing in new areas? Are we investing enough in new talent globally in the right areas? So from that perspective, yeah, we are challenged. And that's why you sometimes see changes and drastic changes. We've recently reorganized to set the structure in place to become closer to customers and to really become a market-driven company. We have been very much of a product-driven company. The technology has sold itself. Governments were our customers and partners before, with Televerket and those kind of country-owned companies. That has been privatized. So yes, yeah. I would say mostly it is a strength to be long, but we need to prove ourselves. Yes. Yes.
And in the case of IKEA, you mentioned that it's always going like this. It's a nice, lovely, optimistic view of the future, and I love that. Yes. But has IKEA had its crisis?
I think you will see if you go to the museum, you can see that there's been lots of challenges, of course. But I think if you, as you said, I mean, you have a film 140 years back, but you're looking forward. So if you have the target in the future, I think the history will be something to bring with you as a positive thing, because that connects people. But if you kind of live in the future, I think that will be a challenge, because so many things happens, and then you have to be using, as I said, you have to step on history to look forward, and then I think it's an asset.
What we see. What we've seen in our history a lot is that the big inventions and the big technology revolutions have not come in a way from the management. They have come from the people that work together and test and try and do garage works, and sometimes even go against the decisions of management to stop a certain product or technology. They believed in it and they continued in a sort of a garage kind of way of working, and later on that became big. And those stories we really highlight and yeah, we try to be transparent with those stories, because that, I mean, we don't want to lose that innovative spirit.
And just to add one challenge, I think there's an interesting challenge.
I hope we're safe here.
I think there's an interesting challenge that we talked lots about. It's a kind of the challenge looking at our concept, because the concept, as I talk to you about, you do your part, we do ours, and then you get a good price. It's a little bit challenged, of course, because now people don't have the time really to do their own all the time. And IKEA is also, we're based our business on the blue boxes. And of course, services, all different kind of services that's about helping people saving time. That is a challenge because people look at IKEA as the company you invest time in. So we work really hard with new formats, new services, and that is a challenge because it's really challenging 70 ways of working.
It's true. We expect that from IKEA in some sense.
That's
true.
deep in our core.
True. Definitely. You both talked right away about your origins and about your founding fathers, didn't you? It's very interesting. Not all companies do, but you do it very directly, both of you. You have very strong founding stories, both companies, and that's something you carry with you, and you use it at certain periods of time, and in other times play lesser role maybe, but still it's very present in your companies. And I noticed that you both use the first name. You say Lars Magnus, and you say Ingvar, and you mentioned Hilda as a team, Hilda and Lars Magnus as well, which is I think very unusual. Usually founding myths need one key figure because that makes it a better story in a way, a stronger story. So that's the sort of type 1A version of it. But here we don't have that. Has this always been a good thing for you, using the founding fathers so directly as you do in creating your identity? These are the pillar saints. They're up there somewhere. Yeah. Don't they shadow what's underneath, for instance?
I think talking about our founder, Ingmar Kamprad, now 90 years old, I think, and I think you also, he's a little bit like Astrid Lindgren, I think. There's not many people not liking Ingvar. And I think he has been super important for us. But also at the same time, using him, I mean, I read his words, 40 years old. I think it's brilliantly written, it's still valid. At the same time, we need to bring our company further, and the company is stronger than him. But still, I think all the times we've been challenged, and maybe he's been challenged, I think we kind of recovered very well, because he's a little bit of a Swedish grandfather.
That's very true.
Yeah, yeah, and there is actually a documentary made about Hilda and her role as a leading woman already in the beginning. So I really recommend you to go to YouTube and find that, because it's really inspirational to see that. Another small anecdote that we have in Kista, the Ericsson flagship store that we call the Ericsson Studio, where we bring 600 VIP groups from all over the world yearly. And we have a very nice statue of Lars Magnus' face, but we decided consciously to not put it in the front, but sort of put it a bit in the back office, behind the curtain, but we still have a spotlight on it. When we had a customer from China, when we opened it, he said, "Oh, how insulting that you put him so behind the curtain." Like, we said, yeah, but we're doing it in the spirit of him, and his vision is so much here, and we are continue to drive that forward. But there you see how one thing can be interpreted in Sweden. They say, "Oh, we shouldn't highlight it too much, it's all about the future." Okay, but in other countries it's really important to highlight the founder and the story, so we try to balance it really nicely. Yeah.
Now, what about if there are charismatic leaders as CEOs, and well, you're not currently recruiting a new CEO?
Yes, we're looking for a new one.
Anyone raise hands?
Yeah.
No, but well, charismatic leaders in the present, are they sometimes shadowed by the pillar saints of the past?
Yeah, speaking from the heart, not at our company. It's more been an inspiration and a humbleness and appreciation of what they have done. In the end, we're all employees of a company, and we are proud to be part of the Ericsson family. So I would say, at least what I've seen from top management, they are all really proud, and they all want to bring that story alive in the right context. So yes.
Yeah. No, I guess I have to be boring. Same thing. Of course, I mean, he is really, and with the person he is really important, and been been really the ones setting all this up, and still is valid, of course, all these thoughts and ideas.
Well, what we are trying to really make the stories come alive of the real people, the people that nowadays also make inventions and come up with new ideas. Yes. So we are rolling out something that we call social advocacy for employees, where we give employee a voice and to help us building the brand globally. We might not have the budgets that Coca-Cola or Volvo have in marketing, but we are doing it in another way. We're doing it through our employees, where many people and every person that talks positively about Ericsson will be a brand ambassador. So we really much try to focus on everyone in the company as well.
Yeah, and I also think when you look locally, the stores, you have the store manager. It's really an important person locally. So we have many, like 400 spokespersons all over the world that are really important locally.
Now, Ben, you said something interesting about the 140 years anniversary and your thoughts about maybe not highlighting it too much and the risk of being associated only with the past and everything. And I know that this is something that many companies, fight, try to manage this conflict about their identity. And for instance, Stora Kopparberg, which was at its time Sweden's oldest company, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it? It couldn't have been 1,000 years, but it's 700-year anniversary that they decided not to celebrate, right? To keep the past at a distance, so to speak, and I think that was a huge mistake, and it turned out very quickly that organization went into great change shortly afterwards. But today, maybe your choice would be the most, the easiest for most companies to wind up to choose to actually highlight your anniversary like this. Wouldn't you say? Isn't that a trend today?
I think especially from a talent perspective. I think a lot of people that come from university and that are innovative and they want to find a job, they might not necessarily care about how old our company is. They want to work in a company where they get the opportunities to grow, to contribute, to bring creativity and ideas to the table, and in the case of Ericsson, to hopefully get an international career. When I was in Ghana, people know Ericsson and they want to work for Ericsson because we give them possibilities to grow internationally. So, yeah, from a talent perspective, it's really important to maybe not overuse how old you are, but rather what you contribute with now and what you can offer them going forward. So, yeah, I would say put it in the right context and make it forward-leaning. Yes.
Now, I think it's time for us to open up for questions from the audience. I'm sure there are many here who would like to add questions. Please.
How do you handle it at Ericsson? With Ericsson's great history, and you make storytelling of that. But how does that work today when Ericsson actually is in a sort of crisis without CEO and trying to get a new strategy on board, so to speak? How can you handle that?
Yeah, I think, and myself, we discussed, of course, with the leadership team, how much should we invest in a celebration of 140 years, for example, to take that as an example. And we said it's important to highlight, it's important to utilize the energy that people have had for generations in the company globally. But we put it in the context of going forward, and we make this a positioning campaign rather than a celebration campaign of the past. Yes, we are in a challenging market. We are a strong company. We have a lot of assets. We have a lot of people that are really good, but we need to change and we need to do it maybe a bit faster sometimes. So what you see is you can change structures and leadership, as I said, but Ericsson has managed to be around for 140 years, and I would say let's challenge that 700 years. But of course, if we are not acting fast enough, if we are not agile enough, then there is another destiny for us. But so I would say we take actions to stay relevant, and one of the actions is that we're now looking for a good leader that takes us to the next step in our growth and strategy. I would also like to clarify that our strategy is correct. We have a strategy and we're following on the same line, and we believe in that. We just need to deliver upon it in the execution and the sales. So that's what we will focus on going forward. Yes.
Now, bringing up Stora Kopparberg makes an interesting thought, because if looking back at history at so long time, you realize that it's only since the last 200 years or so that industry has worked in its present setting. And if you're aiming and looking at 500 ahead or something like that, what would be the setting, what would be the societies you're working on? And what could history tell? I mean, if you go back beyond the Industrial Revolution and the present companies, what would you find then? That's a historical question.
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question. If I could look into the bowl of what the future would bring, I would give you the answers. But what I can say is that Ericsson is the first company that now launches a full 5G network. And with 5G, things like self-driving cars, remote surgery, and those kind of scary / exciting things will happen. So you will see a lot of use cases on top of the technology. And some have said the internet will be dead. What will be after that? How will we work? What kind of embedded technology will you get in your body? Yeah, we're testing and trying, and let's see what it brings us. But we know for sure that the change, the pace of change will go faster and faster. Yes. We are doing a project with Boliden, with the remote mining, where people don't have to travel and go into the mine, but can operate machines from a distance, from Stockholm into the Kankbrink mine. So yes, those kind of things are happening now.
I think when it comes to IKEA and homes, we will of course live in homes in the future. And what we're working with, of course, we are working lots with intelligent homes. And I think it's fascinating to think about in Älmhult, in the middle of nowhere. We are probably one of the companies in the world that are the longest when it comes to technology and homes. And also we talk lots about stores beyond shopping. Because we all see that people's expectations are changing. So it's about the product, it's about the experience in the stores, and I think there's a very exciting future.
But who knows? My boyfriend lives in Amsterdam. He's Spanish. Since 3 years' time we are together. We have a long-distance relationship. Maybe with IKEA and Ericsson technology, we could make the connected home in a way that we don't need to take the planes and save the planet in another way, and still be together very often. So right now I'm very happy that FaceTime time exists and you can sort of get in contact. But yeah, who knows? Ideas are welcome.
Nice final thought, I think, for this discussion. Thank you so much, Patrick and Ben, for a very interesting discussion. I think you clarified a lot of interesting things for us to also build upon in the continuing discussion here. So it's been great, and thank you all. Do we have time for a 5-minute stretcher or not? We do? So a big hand for Patrick and Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.